to shift gears a little bit today. We've spoken a lot about companies, systems, data, etc. We're going to go into a bit more of a personal story about how AI helped a founder successfully exit his business. So today with us, we have Seth Watts, who's the 2024 Enterprise AI Leader of the Year. He's an entrepreneur and a technologist with over 25 years of experience in PropTech and FinTech. One of his recent ventures is Campaign Agent. That was a leading provider of marketing finance, purchased by REA Group in 2023. How did Seth make it happen, and what's next? I'm excited to find out. Thank you.
Great. I may use this if it's okay. Excellent. Well, I sold Campaign Agent to the realestate.com group for $60 million in 2023, along with my co-founder. And we had what appeared at the time to be an amazing opportunity and amazing exit. And it was all of those things for our investors. However, for my partner and I, and my co-founder and I, it was less than a glorious outcome in 2023. In fact, in many ways, it had been a pretty horrible experience leading up into that sale. You see, we had started the negotiation back in 2022. And those negotiations were between us, a team of 45, and the REA Group, who I must say went on to be a wonderful owner of the business, but was also a fiercely difficult counterparty to negotiate with. Their deal team was almost as big as our entire company. And they had made an offer in October of 2022 for the sale price. We felt it was grossly undervaluing the asset, which it was, and spent the next 6 months trying to negotiate what we felt was a fair price. And after 6 months, we had precisely nothing to show for that outcome. We'd given all of the math, all of the models, delivered the growth, had a very clear vision, and had accomplished precisely nothing. And it was difficult because by that point, as founders, we had sold down 60% of the business. So we had a substantial position in the business, but we weren't majority shareholders. And our shareholders or investors had agreed to the sale in principle, and REA knew that. But REA also wanted us and probably needed us to come along for the journey. And so they had promised an earnout. And they said, no. We'll get rid of the investors, and we will have an outcome to recognize your time and sacrifice as well as the growth you'll deliver. Fairly standard commercial outcome. But we were in a difficult situation from a negotiation point of view. We'd lost our leverage. So we were somewhat reliant on their entrepreneurial vision. Anyway, it all came down to April of 2023. We're now 2 months out from when we're going to sell this business. And we had been promised that we'd get a copy of this earnout. And that email arrived. And my co-founder, Sean, he was the numbers guy, I was the sales guy. He comes in and we all disappeared the second it came in, grabbed his laptop and went into a small room. We had myself, Sean, my CFO, Rick. And the presentation comes as like this quite complicated table with all these different numbers all over it. And I'm not the numbers guy, so I'm like, Sean, what does it say? And he says, right, give me a sec. Okay. There's a shitload of upside here, Seth. $20 million is on the table. Good start. All we have to do is triple revenue and hold costs the same. Rick promptly says, fuck this, walks out of the room, and he's done. He's out. And I'm like, what do you mean, Sean? He's like, well, we have to triple our revenue, but in order to maintain the revenue as a bottom and top line measure, we have to get the top line. But the only way to get the top line and deliver the profit that was this formula was to essentially hold costs the same. And we're just looking at each other, and it's like, we're fucked. We're done. We've got 2 years, and not only is there an upside, there's downside. So not only are we going to get payment, if we don't hit these targets, we're going to get punished. So now we've built this business for 7 years, blood, sweat, and tears. We are going to not only be rewarded if we get an impossible goal, but we are going to be punished. So we're going to get a lower price than our shareholders, even though they had done absolutely nothing. Well, their capital would disagree, but they hadn't actually built the business. So we're sitting there and we're sort of just, it's one of those moments where you're just sitting there as a founder going, of all the work we've done, we're here. We're here, backs to the wall. Investors have already said yes. we've got an impossible target. We've got 2 years of our life, which essentially, if we don't get this right, we're screwed. And you're sort of in startup land, you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself, and you've got to have those moments for 5 minutes. You know, it's the old thing. And in startup land, you've got two emotions, terror and euphoria, and lack of sleep makes both better. But that's all you got. So we sat down and we said, okay, where to from here? What do we do? Triple top line, whole bottom line the same. And that becomes really freaking hard for us, because to do that, we've only got a team of 45, and we had been goosing revenue for 3 years. So the way we had delivered, because we delivered that kind of growth, we tripled the business easily, almost every year, but we'd done it by burning investor capital. Huge sales teams, huge promotions, huge incentives. We were everywhere as we went out and built this business. Part of the model, but we had burned through $27 million of equity to get to where we needed to be. So it was a very expensive business model to build. So for us to triple revenue from there, we were going to have to get rid of all of the tricks we had used to actually build the business to its stage. And we had 24 months to do it. So we only had one thing on our side, is it's now April 2023, ChatGPT 4, multimodal, AI is just around the corner. And we got to work because we figured the only choice we've got is to give this a crack. So let's have a crack. Actually, before I go to that slide. So in this business, we are, just to be clear, if you're not familiar with Campaign Agent, we're like Afterpay. So we are, if you want to spend $10,000 on marketing, we will give you a buy now, pay later option. So we're a lender. So we're lending, by that point, $300 million a year into vendors who are then paying us back. So we're basically have to be really good at lending money, really good at collecting it. And so we start with figuring out, well, where's our biggest cost base? We're going to have to hold sales the same. How are we going to actually use the technology we have to hold costs the same? And what we realize is we're going to have to process, instead of processing $1 million a day, we're going to have to process $3 to $4 million a day in loans. And they take an average of about between 1 and 4 hours. They take a long time to process. So that's where we start. And so we figure out that if we could apply AI to the loan application process, we're going to be cooking with gas, because that's a big chunk of our cost. And if we can keep the 6 people who are lending the money, making the loan choices, if we can keep that the same, we've got a hope in hell of doing this. Other problems pop up later. But we actually go through and we don't triple the business. We actually quintuple it over that 2-year period. So we miss the bottom line target, but we blow through the revenue target. And it turns out that we had enough revenue and profit to then meet the two bits that we actually get there. And I want to talk, and this is a prop tech seminar, so I want to be a little bit technical about how we do it, because I think it speaks to how you should be thinking about AI, because AI is not a panacea. It's actually a pain in the butt to use if you're trying to apply it to real world problems, because the damn thing is stochastic, which is a fancy word of saying that it's random. And I don't know about you all, but when you're in a regulated environment and you've got a piece of technology that has bad days on Tuesday, or you have a piece of technology that gets creative when you need it to be specific, it's really hard to engineer around it. So we have to figure out not only how to use this technology, we've got to figure out when not to use it, because it's a pain in the butt, especially when you're owned by REA, who have to be the most precise, regulated, and sophisticated. They do not accept any errors. So we come up with this. And I reckon there's some lessons in this, is that, so deterministic, fancy for saying code, written by coders, humans, algorithmics, ones and zeros. So the first thing we realize is that we need to use AI sparingly and scale the crap out of it for what it's good at and get it out of everything else. So we're reading, in our case, over 500,000 documents every year. So we go through and we figure out that AI is really good at reading and classifying them and really shocking at interpreting them. So what we do is we do deterministic code. We classify the document and figure out which AI to give it to. We then get AI to do the one thing it's really good at in our workflow, which is it can go through and break down a sales authority and tell us exactly what's on it. And then we take all of that content and we get the heck out of AI again and go back to code that we can control, so that when our auditor comes in, we can say, we can reconstruct this workflow every time. So this combination of AI and deterministic, and if any of you have ever tried to drop a contract or a document into ChatGPT, you know what I'm talking about. because it gets 9 out of 10 things right. It says 2 things wrong, and it skips over half of it. And you will get different answers every time you upload it. So if you don't have some concept of mixing deterministic and stochastic is just generative AI. In our case, it was Azure's vision engine. But we mixed this AI with regular code. And what we found is that we could literally process 500,000 documents with 99.9% accuracy. And the thing is that 99.9% accuracy meant that about 20% of the time, we knew that AI couldn't do the job. So part of building great AI workflows is figuring out how to get AI to tell you when it doesn't work, because it doesn't work a lot. So 20% of the time, we were like, okay, AI's told us that it doesn't know what it's doing. Let's get a human to review that. And these types of workflows where you go code, AI, code, human to check the errors, in our world is the kind of workflows you need to turn this stuff from fiction into high volume. That's probably the best tip I can give you. The results, we end up with 4 times the volume of loans, 5 times the volume of revenue. We don't grow the team. We get the accuracy almost perfect. Humans cover the rest. And we take 4 hours down to 50 minutes. But the meantime, most importantly, the customer experience on average is they're experiencing sub 3-minute loan approvals, which, by the way, becomes a great growth tool because we just kick ass. The other thing we do, and this is important, is we take all of this experience we have and we just start telling the story. We invent this concept of AI guy, and we realize that the industry has this insatiable demand to learn. So the other thing we do is we say, great, let's just tell our story as we're doing this, warts and all, and let's get out there and train the industry. So we said, stuff it, let's be the AI experts. And so we create AI guy, and we switch our whole sales strategy. And we actually start not selling lending, we start selling thought leadership, education, and insight. And for those of you who are entrepreneurs, if you ever want to rapidly position your business from decent growth to hyperscaling growth, just become a thought leader, become the expert in your area. And for us, AI became a really good way for us to jump on the bandwagon and become the company for AI expertise. It also allowed us to play to REA's strengths and ours. So the nice thing about this was REA was getting in front of every single real estate agent in the country. We became content for them. We became authenticity for REA. Great, here's our development team. And it led to this huge profile explosion for us. And that's how we then took the back office automation combined with the front end revenue generation. And we ended up grabbing almost 1 in 2 listings in Australia off the back of it. So a couple things, because my time is almost up. 5 principles. So stochastic, it's a fancy word. I just mean random. And by never forget that AI is a random tool. At your own peril, will you forget that? So rapid and lots of deterministic code. I think AI solves some problems brilliantly and most badly. In fact, I think there are much better tools for most problems that have been already written over the last 40 years worth of development. There are so many great libraries out there and coding places to solve problems better than AI. You need to pick where it is. For Christ's sake, tell your customers it's all you do, because that's all they want to hear, but don't actually apply it where it's not good. And then scale it radically. Thought leadership is a great way to grow a business, just as a side note. And then I think everybody on this stage would have told you the same, but measure both the system, but everything in your business obsessively, because that becomes a beautiful, positive, recurring feedback loop back into the AI as well as back into the business. And with that, my friends, we have taken all of those lessons. And so we've decided to do you get in, do you get out? What do you do after you've sold a startup? Sean and I have an opinion that this is going to be a sea change. So even though I'm saying use AI sparingly, our vision is that we deeply agree with the world's going to change philosophy. We deeply believe that this is going to be the most disruptive technology change since the internet, maybe since the Industrial Revolution. So please don't mistake my sparing use of AI for any sense that it isn't revolutionary, because it is. And we are now tackling what we think is going to be the most disruptable part of the world, which is large language models, our language-based technology. So we were looking at language-based businesses. So we're entering into the law. and looking at how we can then use AI to then apply it to conveyancing. So look out for our business as we go through from our funding out to our disruption phase over the next 6 months. Looking forward to meeting many of you out in the battlefield as well as out in the market. Thank you.